Hello, everyone. Today I'm joined by Rachael Reedman, who is a mother of a Cleft baby who is now 4 years old. And I was really interested in talking to Rachel because I saw on the Clubber Facebook page that she had done some research on how the diagnosis was shared with us and what could have been improved and how that made the parents feel. She's also volunteering with the Smile Train on the parent and community actions. So I was just really excited to talk to Rachel. Hello, Rachel.
Hello, good morning.
It's so great to have you on. First of all, could you tell us a bit about yourself and how you got involved with babies and children with a cleft and then doing the research?
Absolutely. So, until I went to my own 20-week pregnancy scan, I knew nothing about cleft. And it was at this scan for my third baby. So, I've been there before, my third baby, that someone said the words to me, there's something wrong with its face. And that's the first time I knew anything about cleft. Moving swiftly on from there, Anya came into the world in September of 2021. She was born with a complete bilateral cleft lip and palate. And yep, she's currently 4, getting ready to start school. She's thriving and she is absolute sunshine in human form. But it took us a long time to get to that point, particularly for me through pregnancy. It was a very difficult time. And now I really enjoy working alongside Smile Train and supporting Evelina where possible in raising awareness of cleft and just letting everybody know that everything's going to be okay.
Did you say she's called Anya?
Anya, yeah,
Great name.
it's great.
How did you get involved with working with the Evalina?
So, Anya is under the care of the Evelina, and they're phenomenal. So, if you're under them as well, lucky you, because they really will take care of you. I think it's fair to say that with the diagnosis in my pregnancy, I didn't deal with it overly well. I found it very difficult. I'm a perfectionist. I was so concerned that I'd done something wrong that I spent a lot of time talking with the psychology team there. And there's a member of staff there who actually runs the whole department now, who I have spoken to for probably years actually, and she's been there to support me through Anya's surgeries, and we've talked in great length about the guilt that I felt through the pregnancy and that I'd caused this, which obviously I hadn't. And so we've always just kind of stayed in touch. And then I started an Instagram page myself called Cleft Cuteness about Anya because I found that reaching out on Instagram in particular when I was pregnant and looking for I don't know, looking for reassurance that things would be okay, that was like the platform for it. And I spoke to some lovely mums on there who really helped me to see that the world was going to be fine. So I started that, and this member of staff, Evelina, follows along. And then she was asked, as part of the Evelina, to do some training for sonographers at Guy's Hospital. And particularly around the psychology of diagnosis. And so she reached out to me and said, would you like to come and volunteer your time to join us on this training? And I jumped at the opportunity.
Amazing. And I've seen some of the responses to your question there on the Clapper group, and it's really a mixed bag of how the diagnosis was shared. And it was quite shocking for me to even see how it can be so different. So, what did you find? What were your conclusions, and what did you present to them?
So it was a full day of training actually for these sonographers. I'm not going to lie, some of it was way above my head in terms of embryology and things like that. But my understanding is that sonographers, obviously, there's a whole host of things that they need to work with when they're scanning your baby. And there's a range of conditions, and they can't possibly be experts on all of them. This day was specific to cleft, and there was a range of speakers, including consultants and members of staff from UCL, to talk to sonographers about how cleft comes about, to challenge any kind of misconceptions around that. And yeah, like I said, to talk about the psychology of it. Now, through the discussions, it became obvious that actually the sonographers there, as lovely as they all were, they really were brilliant and they were open to learning, but they used terminology like hair lip, for example, which obviously we corrected. And they didn't really know enough about cleft, which is where my story came in because I shared the life of Anya with them. And I said, look, this was me. And these were the words that were said to me. There's something wrong with its face. And I talked to him about how I was offered a termination and how we had to, really consider that, particularly having two other children in our lives, whether or not there was anything else we were contending with, and how being offered that termination made us think, my goodness, this is a problem that isn't compatible with life, when actual fact,
Mm.
we know differently, and how close we were to making that choice.
Wow.
Another consultant spoke about how some families she's recently worked with, two of them had had abortions since diagnosis. So it was quite a passionate time actually to be talking. And yeah, I shared Anya's story from the get go, shared her surgeries, shared, yeah, that it was hard at times, but actually, this is a life worth living. She's the happiest little girl. She's beautiful. Absolutely everybody loves Anya. Everybody adores her. She's cleft aware, she can talk about it. And it was really great to see this room full of people going, "Oh, okay. So this is cleft, but this is what it can look like." And I think one of my parting words with them really was, whilst you are, in that room with people, just remember this presentation. When you're giving that news, remember that you can turn around and be a human and say, I know this is really frightening for you right now, but it really is going to be okay. And they were so open to it. I mean, they talked a lot about terminology and they asked what kind of terminology we preferred. Now, obviously, I can't speak on behalf of the whole cleft community because that's not my right. But we did challenge language like hair lip and fixing. Severe, that's a word that's not very nice. Defect, personally, that is one I can't stand. And we challenged those kind of words with them, and they happily discussed alternatives of what they could say. Interestingly as well on that day, so there was a lady from UCL, and she is part of a kind of research group, and they've made, I wouldn't say it's a script, I would say it's like kind of prompts for sonographers. And they kind of pointed out, and I think this is really fair to say, that for a sonographer, they're in that room and the mum's on the bed and they're scanning a baby and it's all in real time. So when they have to give bad news, it's instant. They don't have a moment to go and think about that. Whereas, if you're a consultant, you get given the notes, you review your notes, you think what you're going to say and how you're going to deliver that information. So they've built now, a whole team of people have built like kind of like prompts to support sonographers in giving that news in that moment. And I think that's really where it's moving forward now, to support their sonographers in telling parents of whatever conditions or whatever situations they may have picked up on, is giving them something secure to use to deliver that news in not necessarily, for us, it was a very doom and gloom news that we received that impacted us greatly for the remainder of my pregnancy.
Yeah, I'm so surprised that for quite a few people, they said that the sonographers brought up termination,
Mm.
where I always wonder, surely there should be some diagnosis where maybe you bring it up later, or for some diagnosis, you don't bring it up at all because it really is not life-threatening. So with this protocol or the kind of script that they have developed, do you know if that gets rolled out wider than just London, or is it the training for Evelina specifically where they will be using it? I'm thinking, how can we share this with as many sonographers as possible? But now there's the tricky part as well that obviously it's not just the cleft centers because you get diagnosed at any hospital wherever you have a pregnancy scan. So even just
Yeah.
training the sonographers for cleft specifically in the cleft centers is already a step up, but you would need to roll it out across all the sonographers in the UK. So I don't know if that's feasible, but do you know if there are any attempts of getting it wider?
Yeah, I think it's part of like the medical kind of journals and stuff, so it's accessible to all, is my understanding of it. And then it's being used for training of sonographers. So as they then come through, all the new sonographers particularly will have this training in place. But the day that we went to, some of those members of staff were already established sonographers and some of them were students. So I'm guessing they're going to pick up as they go along. So I hope.
Hopefully. Yeah. So maybe in about 10 years' time or so, you can do a research again and see
Yeah,
how the news were shared. And
yeah,
hopefully it paints a better picture.
yeah. In their diagnosis in a much more, I mean, it's never gonna be optimistic, is it? Nobody wants to go to a baby scan and find out there's a problem. But I think we need to know that, all right, there's a problem, but there's a plan, And there's a really, really good plan. And I wish we'd known that at the time because from the hospital side of things, as in like our local hospital, everything was doom and gloom. And yeah, to be fair, I think both myself and my husband thought, oh my gosh, we're going to have to terminate this pregnancy. And we met the Cleft team from the Evelina, and it was completely opposite. And they were like, "Yeah, great, okay, so this is the situation, and this is what we're going to do, and we've done this, and we've done that before, and oh, okay, let's have a look at the scan. All right, I can see this. So it's likely you're going to need this, that, and the other." And it was, I don't know, it was like just being scooped up and held every step of the way.
Yeah, and that's what you want. And hopefully, with all of our activities, the Instagram pages that we have, people can find us after their diagnosis and see a path forward. I spoke to Charlotte Hall in an earlier podcast, but she, for example, has a book published that she now made available to the families that get diagnosed in Birmingham. So as soon as they get that diagnosis, they get a little booklet about her journey and so on. But so, yeah, hopefully in maybe 10 years' time, we have a bit more of a path or more security. As soon as the diagnosis comes, they can hear from other parents, maybe with the podcast or otherwise, read a little book and see that is a life worth living. Like you said, it will be challenging, but you will get through it and there is a good path and you will have support all along the way. So, yeah, I hope that's the future.
I think that future is really possible. I think it's really, really possible right now because, social media is great at helping. I mean, you need to be careful who you follow and who you talk to. And obviously, on social media, you need to be very aware of what you're sharing because once it's out there, it's always out there. But, if anyone's listening today and they've just had diagnosis and they're feeling really unsure, my inbox is totally open. I'm more than happy to talk to you because I really was that mum in that really, really awful place. I mean, I was so upset I couldn't even eat. I was so upset and just incredibly anxious throughout the pregnancy. And to be fair, probably throughout her first year of life, I was incredibly anxious until we got those two big surgeries in her first year. But I was a mum and I it's okay. Do you know what I mean? Everything's worked out okay. And I couldn't adore my daughter more.
Yeah. But that really shows how important just the language and the attitude of the sonographer in sharing that diagnosis is. Because ours was quite like matter of fact, but never mentioning termination. They just said, well, this is what will happen, and there might be struggling with feeding, but there's a plan in place. So, of course, I didn't want to hear that. Of course, I was thinking, again, it was the third baby as well. I was thinking everything would just be fine, like with the other two. But I still was okay during the pregnancy. It can really, really influence the trajectory of your pregnancy, just that first mention of how they bring it across. So, yeah, I think that's so important, this training and the work that you have done to help them use the right language. Because then again, if the mother is stressed, that can have negative impacts on the baby as well. So, just that one sharing of the news is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. The first time you find out is key, really, as to how you can see your future panning out. And if you're like us and you get grouped into, you can have a termination if you want to. I think that by doing that, you automatically make parents think, oh my god, my child isn't going to have a good enough life that they are offering to terminate it. I believe that's actually under question now as to whether or not it falls into that bracket, but I don't think any real decisions have been made as of yet. But also, I think it's also really important to note, though, that as much as the word termination is awful and horrible, I think we should also be appreciative that we do live in a country where we do have choice because there are other people out there who have situations that really are not compatible with life. Or for some families, maybe this is something that they really, really can't deal with. Choice is always the right way forward. But in order to make the right choice, you need to have the full information, and that needs to come from the medical teams around you.
Yeah. And you always get given that choice also with other diagnoses or independent of that anyway. It just shouldn't be mentioned maybe in the same sentence as the diagnosis being shared. So let that sink in, explain more about the diagnosis and the pathway forward, and then you can still mention you always have a choice, like you said, with the consultants rather than at the very first mention.
Just to mention that it wasn't at my exact 20-week scan that they offered the termination. It was at the follow-up appointment, which was about 4 days later with the fetal medical team, where it was offered then, where it was diagnosed officially, and it was then offered on that day.
But then they even had more of a warning of
Mm.
preparing for the
True.
conversation, really.
Yeah. Very, very true, yeah.
So interesting. But yeah, maybe there's still some room for improvement, I guess. So from the script that they developed, do you know what is a preferred way of talking about it? And I'm aware, like you said, you can't speak for everyone. What would be the best way to receive the news? But what would be some better words?
Oh, I wish I had a copy of it, and then I could tell you that clear answer because I can't remember off the top of my head. But it was good. I mean, I sat there as a mum and I went, "Yeah, yeah, that's a lot better." It was things along the lines of, "We've noticed that. We think baby has got a cleft and that is XYZ," explaining it in the simplest terms. And we are gonna get in touch with a team for you who are gonna support you and give you all of the information that you need moving forward. But it was definitely a positive conversation. It definitely had that air of positivity about it rather than the negative ones that myself and many others have received.
Yeah. Yeah. I really hope that this script gets shared across all the sonographers and we see an improvement there. I
Absolutely.
think the presentation you gave was obviously specifically for training sonographers on Cleft. Is that a thing that's commonly done, or was that really a specific one where the Evelina saw where there is some room for improvement? Or do sonographers in general get trained on Cleft, or is that maybe something that's lacking?
Good question. Again, I can't be 100% on this. I can take from it what I know from the day, but there is an element of their training which is around cleft because obviously it's something that you can pick up on a scan, and so they do get an element of training, but it's very short. This day in particular was the first that they've done at this level with like the whole psychology side to it and guest speakers as such as myself. And I would think the hope is that it will become a more regular thing and that it will happen again. And I know the lady who was there from UCL, she contacted me and she was like, "Would you come and do a talk for me at my university?" So potentially there is scope for that to grow.
I hope they invite you all over the country, that you're talking to all of these hospitals and training places. Yeah, would
I
be
would love
great.
to do that.
And could you sense from the room how people reacted to it? Was it a surprise or something that they always knew? How did they react to it?
Do you know, I was really surprised by the reaction actually. It was really warm. The reaction was really warm. So when I'd finished my talk and I'd shared Anya with them all, so many people came up to me afterwards and they were like, "Thank you so much. We didn't know this. It was so good to see the outcomes for these children." The people who were there that day were really, really open to learning. The lady who was using the terminology of hair lip, she actually apologised. There was a lady there who was a cleft nurse who also is cleft affected herself, and she actually apologised to her and said, "I'm so sorry if my language was offensive. I didn't know." And obviously, our response was, "Yeah, great, thanks for that, and now you do." I think when I shared the actual words that were shared with me, which was, "There's something wrong with its face," there was a bit of a gasp from everybody. So I think they all knew that maybe I didn't have the best sonographer that day, and that's not really the best terminology to use. Uh, but yeah, I think it was heartwarming. I think they sat there and they were like, "Oh my goodness, we've been told this, and we look at it very scientifically and medically as we should because that's our job. But now suddenly someone's just given us the whole human side of it, and like bringing those two things together gave them a much more informed picture of cleft."
Now, moving on to your other activities, because you're also involved in the Smile Train work. So, how did you get involved with this and what does it entail?
Yes, I don't know how I became this person. This was never me before. But yeah, I've done little bits here and there actually, to be fair. I've written a few things for Clapper and I've shared Anya's story with them, for example, and I've done fundraising with them. But Smile Train actually was my husband who started this one. So when we had our diagnosis, I fell apart a little bit, cried a lot. And I wanted to tell everybody so that when Anya arrived, the people were briefed. I think it is very difficult if you produce your baby to your friends and you've never mentioned anything, and then I didn't want people to change their behaviour with me. I just wanted them to know so that they, A, knew I was struggling and needed to love and support, but also that my daughter would, in effect, be born with, for us, rather large hole in her face, which was the truth of the matter. So my husband didn't really know how to do that. He was a lot more closed. He didn't really want to just randomly go, "Yes, we're having a baby and it's got a cleft," which was kind of my response. Um, so he decided to do a charity fundraiser, and we have a hill near where we live. It's called Cannon Lane. It's really hilly, and he decided he was going to run it as many times as it would be to be the equivalent of the height of Everest. And
Wow.
in
Yeah.
doing that, he was going to fundraise, and this would be his way into sharing our story. And so, yeah, he fundraised for Smile Train, and that's really how it all began. And then if anyone's listening and they're interested, say Smile Train Run, I never get the abbreviation right for this. I think it's called the CCAG, and it's basically a community of people who advise on Smile Train's work. So we're all either parents or cleft affected individuals ourselves. We have, I think they're monthly Zoom meetings where Smile Train share their current work, their aims, their objectives, where things are going. They talk about fundraising. I've been sent off to do a little talk before to a Rotary Club to say thank you for the fundraising they've done. So it's all about like a little group of us working together just to promote Smile Train. But I'm sure they're always open to new people if people want to get involved. It's always useful to have people throughout the country because some of these talks are a bit far away and it's quite difficult for us to assign people to them. One of the loveliest bits as well is they always have a celebration of the work of Smile Train, which we get invited to, and that's always a lovely event too, where you get to meet these people in person that we work alongside. Yeah, and it's all about really Smile Train's main effort is to make sure that everybody in the world has access to the same level of world class care that we had through the Evelina, that all babies or all cleft affected individuals, regardless of where you live in the world, should be getting the same treatment so that everyone gets the same positive outcomes.
Yeah, that sounds so good. And I will put a link to them as well on the show notes, but maybe that's something we will get involved in the future as well. Your husband's story is quite similar to actually how we shared the diagnosis because I didn't want to say, yeah, I'm pregnant, but I didn't want to add a but. I really didn't know how to share it. So then my husband, again, he had the idea of fundraising for Klappa actually. So he did a marathon and put on the Facebook page, I'm doing a marathon in support of Klappa because we found out at the 20-week scan this will happen with Mika. And that's a way of also the friends and family knowing, yes, we expect the baby to look a little bit different when it's born, but nonetheless, it's all going to be positive and we're very happy about the pregnancy and so on. Yeah, so it was very similar story, and he raised some money for
Yeah.
Klappa with his marathon.
Great way to share the news as well, really, right? Raising money and also sharing things in such a positive way is what we want to do, isn't it? Because we want our children to know that everything around them is positive.
Exactly, yeah. I think that was one of the hardest things because I didn't necessarily tell everyone before that I was pregnant. We live so remotely as well. People wouldn't have seen me for ages. But yeah, I think it was a very positive because everyone said, "Oh, you're so strong," and donated and just said it will all be fine. Everyone was very positive and supportive, so that was good.
If anyone is listening today and they're pregnant and they don't know how to share it, yeah, I did tell pretty much everybody I'm pregnant and this is the situation. But I can't fault my friends. And actually, they carried me through all of it, really. They were there 100%. They were positive throughout. And even people that I didn't really know. I remember walking into, we've got an Asda really near us. And I pass it every day walking the children to school. So I'd taken the two boys to school when I had Anya in the pushchair. Anya was about 3 weeks old, and it was one of my first ventures out on my own with her in the pushchair. So I nipped into Asda, and the little old ladies poked their heads into the pushchair as they do, the ladies who work at the cash desks. And they were so lovely, and they were like, "Oh, isn't she beautiful? What a little poppet." And I just burst into tears in the middle of Asda. And they were so warm and so loving. They saw the beauty in my daughter, and they had no connection whatsoever to her, like, it made no difference to them. But they straight away could just see this tiny little baby. She was beautiful with her smile, but she wasn't smiling 'cause she was 3 weeks old. But she she was beautiful then, and she's beautiful now. And, yeah, if you're in this position right now and you're pregnant, just give people the benefit of the doubt because I've had so much more love and support than I've ever had anything negative. I think I've had the odd look from generally the older generation. I've had the odd look. I remember distinctly a lady looking in the pushchair actually, looking at her and then just carrying on. Didn't say anything at all. But otherwise, I've never really had anything negative at all. So if you share your story and you talk to your friends, they'll build you up and have trust in generally, most people are really, really nice and they will just see your baby for who they are.
Yeah. And maybe it's more for the parents that we always feel like there's something that we need to hide or that we need to cover up. But I also only had positive experiences. So that was straight after birth, really. I was with the baby waiting for my husband to bring the car around. And there were also older people actually looking at the baby and just said, oh, how beautiful he is and how great it is to have a newborn and that they wish to go back at time and have that again. And yeah, luckily I've never experienced anything. There might be children that are just curious and they look a bit more and ask questions. But again, you can't fault them. It's just, yeah, something is a bit different. So children ask questions, but never anything negative, luckily. So yeah, I was quite surprised, but in a positive way that really the responses. If I go out, it's quite often actually that people say, oh, someone in their family had a cleft lip as well. And they are doing very well now. Everyone will tell you how well their children are now doing, that they're at university or something. So yeah, it's always positive stories that we hear about that. Yeah. How many surgeries did Anya have so far, and
We
at
had a
what age were they?
Yeah, so we started taping when she was 9 days old for her first surgery, and me being me, I was quite on that, quite diligent. We had amazing results from that. Actually, we centralised her gum notch and the lip above it, which meant that we were lucky enough that her 4-month surgery, so the lip repair and do the hard palate, they could do it in one hit rather than two. They weren't sure on the day. They were like, "We don't know if we'll be able to repair that in one go or if it's going to be two surgeries." But no, we were lucky enough that we went through in one, and our surgeon did an incredible job, to be fair. Absolutely incredible. And sadly for us, we did have a few feeding problems, and it was then really, really difficult in a whole nother way that I hadn't envisaged, where she would just refuse milk point blank, to be honest. And that was quite hard to get back in the flow, which did mean that come operation number two, I was probably in a worse place than I was for operation number one because I was terrified to get back to that point. But that one got delayed slightly, so they normally do it around 9, 10 months, I believe, for the palate operation. But because she's lost so much weight, she has kind of fell off the percentile charts. We wanted to just get her a little bit bigger so that, again, if she refused food, we had a bit more of a buffer. So she was done just before her first birthday, actually. And that was her second operation. She actually recovered from that really well. So if you're in that boat, the first one for us was pretty horrendous, but we came out the other side. Second one, loads better. Difficult, but loads better. She then had grommets fitted when she was 15 months. And that surgery, compared to the other two, was a doddle. She was happy and smiling. It was like she'd had a day out. It was all fine. And we were home the same day. Yeah, once you've done the other two, little surgeries like that don't impact you in quite the same way. And yeah, we haven't had anything else since. We are lucky. Her speech is doing really, really well. So because her cleft was quite wide in her mouth, where they've had to pull the palate together, they were concerned that it wouldn't be long enough and therefore we would have speech issues. And although there are a few little tweaks that we are making speech wise, she isn't looking like she needs to have a surgery for speech, which is really good. Otherwise, we haven't had anything else. Hopefully, it will stay that way for a while. She does have a fistula, a tiny, tiny fistula in her palate. It hasn't bothered the cleft team, it doesn't bother her. So that's not worthy of its own operation at present. But when she has her bone graft, then they'll have a little bit of a look then and see if it is something that needs to be done, then they'll do something about it then. Yeah, otherwise, that's currently where we're sitting. So to be fair, like, I don't really think much about her craft anymore because at this time we don't get seen by anybody and nobody talks to us about things. Yeah, it's all quiet on the cleft front for now.
Which is also good to just have a bit of breathing space before the bone graft when it all comes back up
Yeah,
again. The
yeah.
I feel it might be harder when they are more aware, but we will
Yep.
see. We're many years away from that, but it's good to have a bit of a breathing space after that first year.
Yeah, the first year you get seen A lot. I mean, at one point, I think I was seeing it every week for for weeks and weeks and weeks. I had so many appointments. I didn't know what I was doing with myself. But actually, once we'd kind of come out of the palate, and for us, we needed the grommets too. Once we'd kind of come out of that zone, we've had a couple of years of it being really quiet. I think she's due a 5-year checkup actually, so that will happen. And I actually know that we should have been seen by the dentist, and that's not happened. So we need to get in touch with the Cleft dentist. But generally, they are very good at getting in touch with us rather than the other way around.
Given you were in the same situation of having 2 older kids as well, how did they react to it, and how did they handle the whole journey with the operations as well?
That's a really good question. Actually, I think that was probably one of the most challenging things ever of being a mum. Is I just had this most devastating news. Patrick and I, my husband, we were debating whether or not we were going to terminate this baby. We'd only just told the boys that they were having a little sister. We had to kind of hide it from them because until we'd made a decision about anything, it wasn't right to share with them. And yeah, actually, that was an incredibly hard time because I was blatantly upset and I wasn't at work, for example. But again, actually, my friends really helped here. So one of them found a really lovely book called Jack's New Smile. So if you're in that boat, Jack's New Smile is a really good book to share. And once we'd made our decision and we knew what we were going to do, and we ourselves were feeling more positive, we just started by showing them some pictures of some babies. Again, the people that I'd met through Instagram, some of those people were incredible. And there's one lady I know, and her little girl, Harry, she's about 6 weeks older than Anya, actually. So that was really, really useful because we were in very similar boat. And we go to the same hospital, and we've had some of the same consultants along the way. And actually, they'd even commented how very similar our baby's clefts are. So that was quite useful too. But sharing the Instagram stories in particular of these babies really helped because I could say, "Oh, look, this is the baby and how they're born, and you can see here they've got a gap, but it's okay. It doesn't hurt. It's a bit like where your fingertips naturally end. It doesn't hurt the baby. And oh, look, here they are, and they've had an operation, and this is now what they look like." And yeah, we went with positivity, really. We also shared, my eldest at the time was 5, so we shared with his class a little bit, and I think he took the book in there because we wanted to make sure that when she came along, um, his friends were obviously going to ask questions or make comments because a child is going to, and that's completely okay. But we need to give them the right information so that they can then go, oh, okay, and then move forward with it. It doesn't become a reason to be negative or unkind. And they were great as well, to be fair. And we've just always been so open about it, I think. Once we'd got into that mindset and we knew that everything was going to be all right, and that Evelina was there to literally hold our hands throughout all of it, we just went with positivity and continued to celebrate and prepare for a pregnancy. Even if on the inside, I think at the time I was still incredibly anxious and very, very worried and sad. I think I was sad because it's not what I would have chosen for my daughter. But yeah, just went with positivity. I think that's the best thing that you can do. You can give the information in a factual but age appropriate way, and then give that positivity of, but this is what it's going to be like, and this is how we're going to do it. And they don't ever really talk about it much anymore, to be fair. I mean, we've got pictures of Anya around the house with her, um, it was like her before face. That's not really the right terminology, is it? But as a newborn, for example, she's not smiling, so I can't say her first smile either. But I've got her as a newborn, and I've got her post surgery as well, all around the house. And it's not even a thing that we talk about really. It's not. It doesn't even come up anymore. I think it'll come up a little bit more when she starts school. So she's going to start in September. She's going to the same school as the boys. So they'll all be there together, and she's already in the nursery at that school, which is good. I think
Yeah.
I'm incredibly anxious about her starting school because that group, that reception class, she's going to be with them for 7 years. And they're going to be there through her next surgery, which will be her bone graft when she's about somewhere between 8 and 10, depending on teeth. And it's during that time that you do make friends. And it's during that time that children grow and start to really notice the differences and sadly start to single children out. And it's about how we deal with that. But that's not her worry, that's my worry. And that's something that I'm already gearing up to. So I didn't mention, but I'm also a primary school teacher. So talking to children about these kind of things, I'm quite good at doing. And I've done assemblies through the schools that I work in and shared it with all of the children there. So I've geared myself up that when this question arises, I don't want the school to hide it from me. I want them to come tell me and say, okay, so a discussion around Anya's nose, because I think that's probably what you would notice the most is like she's just got a squished nose. That's come up today. what should we do about it? And then I can empower Anya to go forward and share her story and give the information that children require in order to answer their questions and keep it positive.
Yeah. And you've done all the right things along the way because you said she is quite cleft aware. She can explain
Yes.
it, she can talk about it, is not hiding it. She feels very
No.
confident. So that's great. And you can always send her into school with the book as well, Jack's New Smile
Yeah.
or any other book, and explain it to the classmates. And yeah, I think you've
Yeah.
done all the right things along the way.
Thank you. We celebrate her Smileversary every year. It's the 8th of February when she got her Forever Smile. And actually, every 8th of February, we do something there. So this year, she took in a newborn picture of her. That's probably the best terminology for it, as I was trying to find words earlier. She took in a newborn photo that we've had in the house. And she stood on the little stage in the nursery and she told everybody about her clefty, as she calls it. And as she currently is, she's more than happy to talk about it. I mean, she was pulling up her lip the other day to show the staff there where her teeth are, 'cause they're just off to the side. And she's happy as anything to talk about it. I mean, I'm not foolish enough to think it will stay that way. I know there are going to be battles here. I think we live in a world where beauty is everything. But I think that the biggest message that we have for Anya is she's not beautiful because of her face. Her face
Yeah.
is also beautiful, but she's beautiful because of who she is as a human, as we all are.
Yeah. If you could talk to yourself when you just received the diagnosis, what would you have told you or what would have helped you to hear going back in time?
Ah, that makes me feel a bit emotional, I think. 'Cause I really did struggle through the pregnancy. Uh, I think none of the medical teams can ever tell you that everything is going to be fine. They can't give you that promise because it would be unprofessional, wouldn't it, to give that promise? But if I knew back then that my life would look like it does or has done ever since she's been born, really, it's always been positive. It's been hard, like surgeries where, particularly for us, actually, we really did struggle through the first one where we had bottle aversion and she shrank and it really was horrendous. But we came to the other side. Um, I think if I stop and I think about my life, I've got everything that I've ever wanted. And my children are happy and they're healthy. I've got 2 boys and a girl. I'm really lucky that way, and I think it's part of the guilt, I'll be quite open there, is that I really wanted a daughter, and that's possibly one of the reasons why we went for a 3rd child, and then it went wrong for us, and so I think that's where a lot of my internal guilt came from, is that I was being greedy. I had 2 healthy little boys. Should have been happy there, but actually, if I look at my life now, I've got everything I ever wanted, and Anya's cleft has changed me as an actual human for the better. Um, Through the psychology team, I've got to understand myself and the things that trigger me more. I think I have become more open to the differences in the world. I think I'm a hell of a lot more resilient than I ever knew I could be. And yeah, I'm proud. I'm proud of me. But obviously, I'm proud of her and what she can do. And I think I never knew that her cleft could change all of us as a family so much for the better. And I think that is a beautiful thing.
Yeah. That's so good to hear. And I can really understand this guilt, not necessarily guilt in terms of having done something wrong, like not taking all the right nutrients or whatever, but when it's not the first child, when you have other children to consider, you always feel what impact will you don't even think what
Yeah.
impact will that have on me? What impact will that have on the other kids? Will they still have a good life, the same life that they would have had if we didn't decide to go for another child? But we have that child, and now I can say they will have a better life. Like their life is so enriched by having another sibling. But you always feel like, oh, was that the wrong decision to make? And I can definitely tell it was the right decision because they love their little sibling, they love their little brother, and yeah, it definitely enriches their life. But I can totally hear what you're saying and how that felt, that you felt really should I not have just been happy with the life I had before. Yeah. Thank you so much for talking to me today. That was really so interesting. And I have a lot more questions for you. Maybe we can actually do in a year's time also do one on the speech therapy and your experiences on that. And that would be interesting. But I really
Absolutely.
hope we see changes where there was some lacking in the way the diagnosis gets shared and the training of the sonographers. I really hope. And I'm sure that it would have already had made improvements in the Evelina Hospital and where you gave your presentation. So hope that gets spread across as many sonographers as it can be. And it was, yeah,
Yes,
so good to talking to you. Thank you so much for your work in speaking to them and also on the Smile Train fundraising events. Thank you so much. It was great
oh,
talking to
no,
you.
thank you. Thanks for having me, and, like I said, if people do have questions, then I'm on the group anyway, on the, Clapper group. You are more than welcome to ask me, and I'm fairly open about the experience because I would want to make sure that I was really lucky in the support that I was given, and so if I can hand that forward, I think that makes everything worthwhile.
Yeah. Maybe last thing, what's your Instagram? And then I put also that in the show notes so people can follow Anya along.
So I even have to think about that now. It's Cleft_cuteness. And it's got a little picture of Anya on, when she's 2 days old, actually, and she's got a little NG tube in and a little flower hairband. But yeah, you can come and find me on there too. Like I said, I'm, like, open for conversation if people need it.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Bye.